President Obama has grown accustomed to having his foreign travels overshadowed by terrorist attacks or police shootings. This might be the first time one of his trips has been marred by bad manners. On his final visit to Asia as president this week, Mr. Obama had intended to confront America's wartime legacy in Laos and to reaffirm his strategic pivot to the region. On Tuesday, the White House scrambled to limit the fallout from skipping a meeting with Rodrigo Duterte, the Philippines president. Mr. Obama pulled the plug after hearing that Mr. Duterte had unleashed a profane diatribe against him, threatening to repeat it to Mr. Obama's face if he dared ask him about recent extrajudicial killings in his country. Mr. Obama is dealing with other headwinds, not least that he is a lame duck leader in the last 5 months of his term. Back home, his struggles are viewed through the unforgiving lens of election year politics. Donald J. Trump, the Republican nominee, tweeted that the Chinese snubbed Mr. Obama and that Mr. Duterte called him a son of a whore. Terrible. Scrapping the meeting, American officials insisted, was less an expression of Mr. Obama's pique than a recognition that the news media would treat it as a spectacle. All of the focus was on those comments, said Benjamin J. Rhodes, the Deputy National Security Advisor. We felt that did not create a constructive environment for a bilateral meeting. Mr. Rhodes insisted that the alliance between the United States and the Philippines was rock solid. The two countries worked together on a range of issues, from drug interdiction to counterterrorism. He said it was possible that Mr. Obama might run into Mr. Duterte anyway, since the two are attending a meeting of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations here in Vientiane. For Mr. Obama, it was an unseemly distraction from what he hoped would be a somber day of remembrance and reconciliation. The first president to visit Laos, Mr. Obama came with a pledge to double American aid, to $30 million a year over 3 years, to help Laotians find unexploded bombs in their forests and fields. The United States dropped more than 2 million tons of explosives on this country during its secret war from 1964 to 1973, a legacy Mr. Obama said too few Americans understood. As one Laotian said, "The bombs fell like rain," he said to a polite audience at the Lao National Cultural Hall. Mr. Duterte appears determined to carve out a more independent foreign policy than his reliably pro-American predecessor, Benigno S. Aquino III. He has talked about trying to settle an impasse with China over the Scarborough Shoal, a disputed clump of rocks in the South China Sea. Mr. Rhodes said the United States would give the Philippines leeway to negotiate an agreement with China, with the important caveat that it adhere to international law. That is a message Mr. Obama would likely have given Mr. Duterte in person. We should prepare for a wild ride since the constantly changing outbursts of President Duterte undermine the stability of the government's foreign policy, including U.S.-Philippine relations, Ramon Casipal, head of the Institute for Political and Electoral Reform in Manila. The diatribe against Mr. Obama, he said, was knee-jerk as an outburst, but calculated to produce a certain breathing space for negotiations with China. As with the Philippine affair, administration officials said the airport scene would have no spillover effect. Mr. Obama himself described the visit as extraordinarily productive, noting that he and President Xi Jinping had continued their landmark collaboration on climate change. None of this detracts from the broader scope of the relationship, he said. And yet, administration officials showed delight in the fact that when Mr. Obama left Hangzhou on Monday evening, the Chinese moved a shiny staircase with blue lighting to the side of Air Force One.